So y'all been asking, it's time. Okay, so for quick context, my name is Davion Tatum. I'm a recent Harvard graduate and community organizer here in Houston, Texas. I've also been helping students apply to college for a long time. For free, also. Since 2021, I've been helping kids apply to college. And recently I was asked, why don't you talk about this on social media? Why don't you post your advice and your tips and all these things that you have, especially now that you've been through college, the entire process? Why don't you share that with more people? So here we are, sharing it with more people. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Harvard, talk about some questions that I've received in my DMs, as well as some questions that I've received from people who I mentor in person here in Houston. But there is a catch. I didn't want this to be all boring, me sit here talking to you, you listening, maybe taking notes, maybe not, whatever the case might be. So I came up with an idea, and it's inspired by one of my favorite things I like to watch on YouTube. So I'm not sure how many of y'all are familiar with the YouTube channel where they have the board with the Google searches and they go through and peel off the tape for the most asked searches and then they answer those questions on spot. Well, we have our own board. Look at that. Look at this. Now, it's not as fancy and as aesthetically pleasing as theirs, but look. Isn't that cool? I do hope y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Because if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then this probably looks very foolish and silly. But if you do know what I'm talking about, this is awesome. And I have some questions here. I know what the questions say already because I made this myself, but I'll act as if I don't know them. So I'll be like, oh, that's a great question, and all the things, right? And all of these are from DMs that I received via Instagram. I'll show the full text of the question here in the video, but I paraphrase them here for convenience sake. And you know what? Y'all may think this is a little bit corny, and that's okay. You can have that opinion. I like this, okay? I thought this was really good. I printed out at Walgreens. I have the little Harvard logo right there. They usually put the Google logo right there, but I did the Harvard one for Harvard graduate answering questions, you know. But this is cool to me. I had a good time doing this, so I hope y'all like it. If y'all don't, then, you know, hey, it is what it is. But let's go. So the first question, hold on. Hold what you got. Just 1 second. Just give me 1 second. There we go. Look at that. Boom. First question. How do you pick? I need my glasses. Hold on. I can't see. There we go. Much better. How do you pick a major or choose organizations to join? So the full question is right here. You can read it for yourself real quick, and then I'll answer it. This is a great question. It's a question that was asked by someone who is already in college right now, going into their freshman year. And this question is rooted a lot in, how do I know what's best to do when I go into college or as I step foot on campus? The novelty of college sometimes overtakes us, but what is the focus, or at least the primary focus? Because at this point you're being hit with so many different things. You're moving on campus now, and or getting an apartment somewhere near campus, living with random people and different roommates that you've never met before, and there are so many things being thrown at you at once. It becomes difficult to just navigate that, right? Just to navigate moving in, let alone how do I know what major to pick and what organizations to prioritize and join at the beginning. And I think a lot of times people have this question because they want to set themselves up for success moving forward. Especially if you're a high achieving student, you're like, hey, what do I do? How do I know what to do? And how do I do it to the best of my ability? To this question, at the risk of sounding a bit cliche, I want to respond to the latter part of it first. How do I choose the organizations in which I want to join? Choosing those organizations should be something you do from a place of passion and interest, right? Not necessarily doing what the end thing is or doing what you see a lot of people doing. You could. That's very much within your wheelhouse and within your volition to do. But a lot of times what's become, at least for me, a life lesson is when you follow your passions, you cannot really go wrong in a purposeful mission and goal. And by that, I mean, if you follow things that light that fire in you and that spark that interest in you, you can't really go wrong in doing that. If you go in for, say, biomedical engineering, as I did, yet you have a passion for advocacy, so you find yourselves in these different organizations or groups, and you may find yourself in an entire environment of organizations that have nothing to do with biomedical engineering, but you're passionate about it, you may then unravel or uncover a newfound interest or a newfound passion that you had yet to fully explore. So I do say go into it with an open mind, an open heart, and recognize that there are organizations for pretty much everything. I mean, honestly, they have organizations wide-ranging for pretty much every field, interest, passion, purpose that you could possibly imagine. So following that can help you to narrow in on what you actually want to be involved in. And sometimes that organization you're involved in at the beginning of your semester may not be the same when you're involved in towards the end, right? It may change by semester, by year. It may shift, it may adjust, it may move, it may grow because you are growing and your passions may grow, your passions may shift, and they may expand. So you have to be open to that. What organizations should I join? What organizations do you want to join? Again, not the ones that may look the best on a resume, right? Because the best thing for a resume, believe it or not, is when you can speak to the passion and the purpose behind what you actually did on that resume. So if you're just joining an organization to say, oh, look, a great resume builder, but you're interviewed about it, it's like, why did you join this? Why did you spend so much time in this if you can't even speak to the way in which it intersects with what you want to do professionally or what you want to do purposefully? And I think a lot of times people get this misconception that I have to join all these orgs, have to be in all these leadership roles, have to do all these things solely for resume purposes. And that's not how you should orient your thought process towards why you want to join an organization. You should orient your thought process a little more towards, how do I see myself as a part of this organization? How does this organization play a role in helping me to explore my passions and my interests? How does this organization better me as a person, whether that be academically, socially, whether that be career-wise, professionally? How does this organization help me, and how can I help this organization to reach its full potential? And I feel like when you look at it more in that relationship, it helps you to better recognize which organizations may be best to join for the right reasons versus some other reasons that we're often taught to believe are the right reasons. As far as major, here's what I'll say about that. I picked my major my senior year. No, honestly, I changed my major so much that I started off as biomedical engineering, and then I went to at one point wanting to do physics and philosophy, and then I did biomedical engineering and government, and then I did biomedical engineering and history of science, and then I did molecular and cellular biology and history of science, and then I settled finally my senior spring on integrated biology and history of science. And I think that for me, it was navigating those different interest paths, right? And those different concentrations, that's what we call them in Harvard, but majors that at the time I thought aligned with me. And at the time I thought I wanted to do. But as I developed throughout college my interest and developed what I actually wanted to be a part of and the work that I wanted to do post-grad, I realized that a lot of stuff I was dedicating my time to had not necessarily been as fulfilling as I recently had anticipated or believed it to be. So because of that, when it comes to the question of how do I pick a major, I always tell people, again, this may sound cliche, but trust your gut and follow your heart. If you are interested in something, get into those courses to learn about that interest. Get into those courses to learn more about what that actually looks like. I heard somebody say how the soup is made, right? I was pre-med for a long time. And because of that, I went, all in to the pre-med stuff. I was shadowing. I shadowed a cardiothoracic surgeon. I got to watch open heart surgery. Where the anesthesiologist stood, I was watching open heart surgery be performed on someone, right? I was shadowing doctors left and right. I was getting research assistant positions at MGH and Boston Children's Hospital. I was doing all this stuff for pre-med because I thought I wanted to do pre-med. And my major reflected that as well. The things I was involved in started to reflect that also. But it was actually through various courses where I was able to explore different interests. I took a course called Gen Ed 1093, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Cares, Reimagining Global Health. It was taught by the late, great Dr. Paul Farmer. And that opened my eyes to like, wow, there are health disparities, which broadened my interests from at the time being strictly STEM to how does STEM interact with society? How does what we learn here in the lab actually impact people's lives in real world scenarios and situations? How does social determinants of health impact people's actual health outcomes, right? And it was through exploring those courses and exploring those different organizations of advocacy, of public service, of civic engagement, where I realized, like, oh, wait, my trajectory is being shifted because I'm understanding more about my passions. And I feel like that happens too with majors. That's why I feel like that question is so good, because your major and the organizations you join, we may not see it at the beginning, but they work in tandem a lot of times. They go hand in hand. And it's because a lot of what we do in college is self-discovery. It's learning oneself. And doing college correctly does not just revolve around having a high GPA or doing really well in an organization and becoming the leader of that organization. Doing it correctly means that you were able to go through and navigate 4 years at an academic institution and come out knowing more about yourself and what you want to do and how you want to interact with the world around you. So I feel like that also plays a role. So give yourself some grace if you're concerned about your major, concerned about your organizations. Follow your heart. Ask yourself what you really learned in the classes that you've taken, and also what you want to learn more about. And they may have some classes that you've never even heard of. Take them, explore, see what happens when you go outside the standard and go outside the narrow box that we often put ourselves in. See what happens when you explore a little bit more.